This one's for the Vegas locals and Vegas locals only. STN Sports is the sports betting experience built for you. From the app to the 19 convenient locations across the valley to sign up, bet, and watch your favorite games. And with a massive betting menu and daily odds boost, there are tons of ways to get in the action. Sign up today.
I feel comfortable, feel healthy, I feel thankful, and I feel hungry. You know what I'm saying? Back, still got to prove it to the world on each and every Sunday, Monday or whatever, Thursday night. And I got to prove it to my team every day I step in the building. It's just a mindset, But I think Coach P just see me having a lot of fun with the game again. No pressure on me, just going out there and do what I've been doing my whole life, just having fun. So if me having fun on the field with my guys is me being back, then I'm glad to be back.
And that was the voice of new Raiders linebacker Devin White, and a very insightful Devin White, to say the least. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Want to welcome everybody to Vegas Nation First and 10, your daily go-to for Raider news and analysis. Training camp is churning along. The train has left the station. We are day 6 today. Was the
7th day of camp, 6th practice?
Adam always keeps me in line and all that. By the way, I'm Vinny Bonsignore. I cover the Las Vegas Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. To my right is, of course, Adam Hill, my great colleague and friend from the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. All Vegas Nation podcasts, including First and 10, are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports, and we thank them for all their support. We thank you for all of your support. Thank you for being on this journey with us. It shows no end at all. We're really just in the beginning, but I think things are starting to come into, or the picture is becoming a little bit more clear with each passing day. Adam Hill, we just heard from Devin White, and listening to Devin today, and he had a lot of interesting things to say about his journey, about kind of his journey back after an injury-riddled season last year that he experienced, going from the Philadelphia Eagles to the Houston Texans. Obviously, prior to that, he was a long-standing player with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The injuries, the mental toll that it took, and he's kind of fought his way back into a position here with the Raiders and an opportunity here with the Raiders. And you look at that linebacker room, which, let's face it, has completely overturned, basically, at least in terms of the starters. And I know that from the perspective of fans, there were a lot of questions about that linebacker room. But, man, the more we watched this group working together, and you realize that it's Devin White, a vested veteran, Landon Roberts, a vested veteran, Jermaine Pratt, a vested veteran. There's a lot of experience and a lot of versatility in that room, maybe a little bit surprisingly so as we watch it, that this could actually turn into be somewhat of a strength for the Raiders defense.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think I'll start with every time that we hear him speak, very selfishly, because it doesn't matter the wins and losses on the field, but I'm always like, okay, there's a guy we're going to be able to talk to every single game, every single practice.
I think all three of those linebackers.
For sure. Landon Roberts, absolutely, and certainly Devin, every time he speaks, you're like, okay, that's a guy.
For sure.
That you're going to be talking to a lot.
No doubt about it.
And a guy that really just, is able to, share his thoughts and put them in a very interesting way, and I really enjoy hearing it every time he speaks. So that's from a selfish perspective for us as people that cover the team and need good quotes from people. But just in terms of what that linebacker room is, and you talked about it, I think this is something we talked about a lot over the summer. Like, there's a lot of questions from all those guys. Like, you have questions about all of them, but if they have the answers to those questions, all of a sudden it becomes a very, very good room. You don't need all of them to be. You don't need all of them to come through. You don't need all of them to be at their best. But if one or two, or especially if it's three guys, but if two of them live up to what they have been at their best, then all of a sudden it's a room that's very, very dynamic, very talented, very capable, and has played at a very high level. And he's, I think, the biggest one of those, because we talk about the injuries and talk about what happened last year, but there was also, before injuries, a pretty sharp drop-off in his play. I mean, I don't think there's much question about that. And that's one of the things he talked about today, as you were referencing, that, you can look at last year and say, well, injury-plagued, obviously didn't work out. The Eagles went to the Texans, really couldn't even get on the field. And you could chalk that up to injury, and that's what happened. But what about before that? What about before there was injuries? And he just said, people don't know always what you're going through. He had a very complicated relationship with his father, and then just when it started to get healed,
Yeah.
and he was starting to get close to him again, then his father passed, and he was having a hard time kind of getting through that and expressing it and figuring out just how to process all of those emotions.
And it was very, very poignant what he had to say, and a reminder, as if, we're reminded of it all the time because we talk to these guys and you get to learn about backstories and we give we don't always know what they're dealing with, but I think we have a better understanding of what they're dealing with, to say the least, about fans who don't always understand or know, and how could they, what guys are dealing with. But it's a reminder to me to always understand and keep in mind, you never know what somebody is dealing with. And I want to say the year that you're talking about, which would have been 2023, was one of the first years in a little while that he hadn't had, over 100 tackles, right? Yeah. This was a tackling machine with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a guy that won a Super Bowl championship with the Buccaneers. But you're right, that last year in Tampa, there was a little bit of a slide in terms of the production. And not trying to make any excuses for him. The numbers were what the numbers were, and they weren't as good as they had been. But as he shed some light on what he was going through, it might.
Well, also, I'll say this, and this is putting these things together. And you're totally right. Like, a lot of times people talk to me about how I see football or how I see players, and that, and like my perspective has certainly changed a lot since I've been in locker rooms every single day and understanding that they're human beings and that sometimes they just have bad days.
Right.
Like, oh, you didn't play well. Yeah, because his dog died that morning.
Right.
It's like just a human being.
Yeah.
It's very interesting in that regard. But I'm going to put these pieces together, even though he didn't say this. So I'm not, I'm putting words into his mouth, but I'm going to make this assumption that he was playing for a contract. And he talked about it today. He's like, I felt like they didn't reward me the way that they should have rewarded me for how I played in
the
Tampa.
Buccaneers.
And if you go back and look and put these pieces together, and he's talking about this relationship that he was finally resurrecting with his father. His father dies, and he has these complicated feelings of, what was our relationship, could have been better, all these things, and all this, feelings of abandonment, those sorts of things. And at the same time, this team that you've played very well for is like, I don't really think you're worth a big contract. Like, again, he's not saying this, but I'm listening to him in there as we're just a couple feet away from where he's talking, and I was putting it together in my head like, wow, those things were all happening at the same time.
Well, what's doubly interesting about that is part of that front office is now the general manager of the Raiders, and a guy by the name of John Spytek. So, timing is everything in life, and it just so happened that I don't know if it was the worst year, the least productive year of his, of his very productive years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers occurred the year that he was going into the real.
And that's, by the way, not a critique of like Tampa Bay being heartless, anything like that. Like all they're looking at is how you're playing on the field, and like, well, if the production's not there, we're not going to sign you to this big contract. But at the same time, he's processing all these different emotions. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to kind of look back, and we heard Pete Carroll say today, he's back.
Yeah.
Like, he's back. And when I asked Devin about that, he kind of joked, like, where'd I go? But he knows.
But
he knows what he's talking about. He was joking about that. And he followed through, and he was like, yeah, I feel back. And, like, again, he's only 27. Mm-hmm. He's not old. He does, he's had a lot of hits, a lot of contact. There's been, a lot of tread on the tires. But, again, only 27 years old. And you could tell that that desire is still there for sure.
He came out in the same draft as Max Crosby.
Yeah.
That puts that in perspective. Now, going back to Pete Carroll, and that's exactly what he said about Devin White. He also said this about the linebacker room. I got 6 guys that I could play. Yeah. That could play. And so I started doing, okay, who are we talking about here? I think he's putting 33, Jamal Adams, into that category. Tommy Eichenberg's been getting some run now with the second team. There's Lindbergh, the rookie from Minnesota, but what about Jalen Smith? Another guy that has had a kind of a winding road of a journey, and injuries have played a massive role with Jalen. He's taken some time off, obviously. There's not going to be enough room for all of these guys, but it feels like Pete Carroll feels like, hey, there's 6 guys that I think can play football, and Pete Carroll knows who can play football and who can't play football.
For sure. And look, a lot of that is still, when you do have a room like this, like they have with the Raiders, with a lot of veteran guys, and guys who've played at a very high level, like guys like Landon Roberts and Devin White. You do need linebackers to play special teams, and again, you don't necessarily think of those guys being special team aces. So there's going to be also, in addition to the guys that you're talking about, of hey, there's all this ability, 6 guys that can play linebacker. Well, the way on the roster for those guys that are on the edge is who can stand out on special teams, and it feels like most of the team has been willing, even. We talked yesterday about Max Crosby playing on the field goal team and Ashton Genty being potentially a returner. Again, doubt those things really happen, but they've been doing it in practice. And Tom McMahon said we wouldn't do that if they weren't actually competing for those roles. So a lot of guys that you might not expect would play special teams might do so. And the kickoff rule has a lot to do with that as well, where they're expecting 70 more kickoff returns per team, according to Tom McMahon and his calculations. So that becomes a much more valuable play that you're probably going to have guys that you wouldn't think would play special teams out there. So special teams will be away on the roster, certainly for these linebackers.
Sneaky big other part to that, the practice squad. And, Pete Carroll's defenses, football teams in general, are known to play with a physical edge, right? Yeah. They get after it. What happens when you play physically? Sometimes injuries occur. So if we're talking about a Jalen Smith, a guy that maybe he's on the practice squad that could get called up when needed. And I would venture to say that needed is probably going to be a requirement or something that a reality. That maybe you have to dip into your practice squad. So some having veteran players that have been there, done that, that might not be 17-game players anymore. Yeah. Jalen Smith might not be a 17-game guy, but he might be 5 or 6 or 7 if you need him in that regard. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it feels like there are numbers in the linebacker room, maybe surprisingly so, given where that room was. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about some surprising or whatever, some heated and hot competitions that are getting hotter by the day.
Hot and
heavy here with the Raiders. We'll be right back to talk about that.
So if you haven't had a chance to get the app yet, again, we still have the $50 no-worry wager available. What a great time to get in the summer. Get yourself familiar with the app. The auto racing, horse racing, the golf,
women's softball,
the MMA. Whatever you're interested in, check out the STN Sports app.
Jordan specifically, he's done well. He played really efficiently last year. His numbers and his consistency really showed up, even though he didn't seem as a regular all the time. So he just opened our eyes in the offseason studies, and so we're just giving him a shot. JPJ's working his tail off, and both those guys are battling. So it just makes us better.
Welcome back, and you just heard from Pete Carroll talking about what has become a real full-bloom competition for the starting center job between Jackson Powers Johnson and Jordan Meredith. I think Adam and I both agree. We'd be surprised if it wasn't Jackson Powers Johnson that wins this job. But from Pete Carroll's mouth, this is a real competition. And Jordan Meredith, who we both agree also is a pretty darn good football player, has firmly established himself as somebody that the Raiders are at least open to being their starting center this year.
So I'm still a little bit skeptical that it's a real competition. I still see Jackson Powers Johnson as a starting center, as you said. And I think if it was a real competition, you would see Jackson Powers Johnson maybe playing more guard, or at least getting more reps in at guard. Because I think if Jordan Meredith were to, in fact, win the starting center job, which I think we both think is kind of a long shot, then Jackson Powers Johnson would probably they'd be best served by moving him back to guard. And one of the things Pete Carroll also said today was they saw what success Jordan Meredith had. And they said last year he was playing guard and he had some success, but they thought maybe, even though he wasn't a center, maybe center might work out better for him just in terms of
his body,
his size, and the way that
he
can move, and he wouldn't be lined up against some of those big 3 techniques, even though he held his own in that regard. But they saw on film, hey, we think he can be a good center, so they're trying him out at center. But if they really thought he could win the job, I feel like they'd move JPJ over and have him play in some guard at least, out on the field to see if that would work. Unless they think he's good enough at guard that he doesn't need the reps, which I don't think that's probably the case. It's interesting to me because I do think Jackson Powers Johnson is absolutely better suited at this level to be a center. Even though he played fine at guard, I think he played much better at center, and I think that is his position going forward. It makes sense that they like Jordan Meredith at center, for sure. That makes sense to me.
The communication.
Yeah, he's smart. Solid player, good communication. The size makes him more likely to play at center. I understand why they like that, but I feel like if they wanted Jordan Meredith there and they thought he could play that role, then maybe they move Jackson Powers-Johnson, and maybe we'll see. We'll watch the next couple of days. If Jordan Meredith is doing enough at center to truly be in the competition, I would expect Jackson Powers-Johnson at some point to start getting some reps at guard.
And if you're keeping score at home, it's literally been one day it's Jackson Powers-Johnson as a starting center. The next day it's Jordan Meredith.
6 practices, 3 each.
3 each, including today, which was Jordan Meredith's day on day 6, even though it's day 7 of training camp. Another camp battle that's really brewing is over there at cornerback. And a couple of players have really started to, ascend?
Yeah,
Picaro was impressed with the word ascend, but I said it because that's what I mean. That's what I feel like is happening. That DeCameron Richardson is ascending on this depth chart. He's getting plenty of reps now as the starting cornerback. Much like there's been alternating days with the starting center job, there's been alternating days now. It's not quite 3 for 3,
right.
But the last 3 days or so has definitely been a flip-flopping between DeCameron Richardson and the rookie Darian Porter.
I feel like we should also point out here it's at one corner because the other side,
right. Eric
Stokes seems to be the guy.
Yeah, he's right. He looks pretty darn good, but you're absolutely correct. That job looks solidified. Eric Stokes feels like the starting cornerback on one side of the field. On the other side of the field, over the last few days at least, it's been an alternating between DeCamerion and Darian Porter. My whole point about not my point, but my observation about DeCamerion is, yeah, I know he struggled last year when he got forced into action. He might not have even been ready. If you remember correctly, and I had to jog my memory, he was hurt early on in training camp last year, and I remember distinctly watching him battle the first couple of days, and he actually looked pretty darn good. Like, there's something there, right? Yeah. And then there was a groin strain or a hamstring strain that kept him out of the rest of training camp and then into the regular season, if I remember correctly. Yeah. It was a little bit of a battle for him to get on the field. Then Jakarian goes down, and there's some other issues that were all of a sudden DeCamerion has to go out there. It was a struggle, and I know a lot of fans at that point kind of wrote him off. I don't get that line of thinking. You draft a guy understanding that you have him here for 4 years. It might take 4 years. It might take 2 years. It might take 1 year. It might not take any time at all. But you don't just discard guys because it looked a little rough to start out with. The guy has legit 6'2" size and legit speed. And it feels like he's putting himself back onto or just onto the radar of this regime.
Yeah, I think he's in the mix. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
He's done enough to warrant getting first team reps, and he's got them fairly consistently. As you said, it's been going back and forth. It's a battle, and I know. Look, this staff loves Darian Porter, and they love what he brings. They love his size. I mean, he literally, I don't think, could be constructed better
if you were to draw it up.
If Pete Carroll were to make his perfect corner.
Yes.
And I know that's not really the fit that a lot of coaches would prefer, but it's Pete Carroll's prototype of a corner. That's Darian Porter, and they love him, and they want him to succeed.
Right.
But they also see that DeCameron Richardson has something as well, and he's worked his way into that mix. He's done enough to impress them to this point to put him in the mix and to give him a shot to potentially be a starting corner in this defense.
Right, and not necessarily in terms of starting job, but somebody that's also making a move on the depth chart is JT Woods. Ascending is JT Woods, the Baylor product, but was drafted as a safety by the Los Angeles Chargers, played primarily, if not exclusively, at safety when he did get on the field with the Chargers. He comes to the Raiders a little bit late. He was part of that last quick signing that they made, if you remember correctly, right before training camp. They cut, about 5 guys?
It was the Jamal Adams day, I believe.
It was that day, yes.
I believe
exactly.
The Jamal Adams, if you think back, Jamal Adams signed, and that was the big talk, that was the big headline, obviously.
But
guy
underneath the
big,
surface.
But then they're like, also they signed 4 other guys and released 4 guys, at least 5 guys at the same time, and this was one of them, and certainly he's worked his way into the mix pretty quickly. And if you notice here, there's a trend as we're talking. how many players in a row have we mentioned that they saw at one position and said, Jamal Adams was one, obviously a safety that they're now trying to make a linebacker. JT Wood's a safety that they're trying to play quite a bit at corner. Jordan Meredith they saw last year as a guard that might fit better at center. Like, this is a lot of this, constructing of what could end up being the depth chart here is finding guys that, hey, maybe they played okay in one role, but they might succeed better in another, and that's seems to be a lot of what this staff is doing right now.
Yeah, it feels like Pete at USC, where you got recruited to play one position, but you know what? 6 practices in, we think you could play another position. Sometimes it's on the other side of the football, by the way.
Darren Porter himself was a receiver all throughout college, and now switched over to corner.
Absolutely. So I think it'll be interesting to track the center opening or job fight, and then also that cornerback room as well. Real quick before we get out of here, this was day 2 of pads, and I think both of us agreed. Monday's practice, the first day of pads, was clearly Jack Besh's best day of camp. I thought he was the best wide receiver on the field on Monday, and not coincidentally to me anyway, it coincided with the pads coming on. And I felt like this team, this organization, was itching to get into pads for various different reasons, but I think one of those reasons for them was to see Jack Besh in his natural habitat, so to speak, and that's with the pads on, being physical, a physical wide receiver. I want you to talk about that. But before we do that, also, and I think maybe this was more, I think Jack was affirmation. I think Dante Thornton's ability to play with the pads on and the physical side of the wide receiver position was, I wouldn't say a pleasant surprise, but a furthering of, okay, this guy, the Raiders have something to work with this with Dante Thornton, because I thought he showed up too when it got a little bit more physical.
Yeah, and I think one, and you mentioned Jack Besh probably is the one that everybody said, yeah, of course, that's his game. It's weird to say because obviously everybody plays in pads.
Right.
Like, that's how football is played, of course. Yeah. But some guys just look better in the pads than they do in the shorts. Like, you see some guys out there in shorts, and you're like, oh, this guy's a star. And then pads come on, you're like, oh, that's maybe why.
Exactly.
That was me, by the way, as a high school player.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hit anybody. I'm like, great in the drills. Doesn't want to hit anybody.
Right.
But yeah, there's guys that are more physical. Their game's based on physicality. There's just guys that are gamers in that regard, right? So I think certainly that was the case with Jack Besh. Dante Thornton seems like a guy, this is not about him. He seems like a guy who would probably be better in shorts.
Right.
And be like, oh, he's going to look great in shorts, and you put the pads on, maybe not going to be that. He showed up, and I think that's probably been impressive for the coaches and for everybody around to say, all right, he's carried over what, of course, a guy with that kind of skill set is going to be good when it's shorts on and just kind of out there in the sun having fun playing football. What's it going to look like in the pads? And he's answered the question just like Jack Besh has, I think, affirmed what everybody believed.
Right.
Dante Thornton might have answered questions that some people might have had.
Yeah, and Pete mentioned in Dante the willingness to kind of go over the middle, knowing you're going to get roughed up a little bit. I think there was one there where it was.
You had alligator arms on one.
Yes, exactly.
Sure.
That's okay. I mean, that's it's still a process. But I think from that, kind of not necessarily from that moment on, but I didn't see any of that the rest of that practice. So one thing about Dante that I think is becoming apparent to us is he moves on pretty quickly from things. It was we've seen a couple of whether it was ill run routes or as Adam said, kind of came up short on a ball where there was a safety hovering. Yeah. He wasn't going to get hit like that in that setting.
It's still your mind.
Exactly.
I think your mind tells you.
Especially on day one.
Coming. Late throw over the middle, somebody's coming.
And you never know who's trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah.
So
Jamal Adams is on the field.
Exactly. I feel that and I sense that, and I'm not going to take anything for granted. So I'm just going to let that ball go. Yeah. But I think he learned from that and was stood up to the physicality from that point on. Last observation today, there was a little bit of a skirmish today, and it involved Justin Shorter, the Raiders tight end, and Jacorian Bennett, who seems to be sliding down the depth chart rather than ascending. But it raised the ire of the defense, and another sign that the physicality is back, and I think guys are getting geared up. So that was kind of a fun,
pretty good size mismatch there. Justin's a pretty big kid.
He was, and he got Jacorian onto the ground, and then to make matters worse from a defensive standpoint, because the entire defense came running on the field. It was right on the defense, right, maybe 10 feet away from the defensive sideline. As Jacorian was sitting on his butt, basically, after getting sort of, wrestled to the ground, Justin circled back and just waylaid him while he was on the ground. And that did not go over well with the defense. The defense had Jacorian's back. And so it was one of those.
Such a dichotomy from yesterday, because Justin's family was here at practice yesterday, and it was during pre-practice, so it was not like they were in the practice yet. They were kind of getting out there, taking the field, and his family got there, and he literally ran over like a kid seeing his parents for the first time in a long time, and just was so excited to see his family out there. So then you see that, and the next day you're out there in a skirmish, which is pretty noteworthy. I was going to point out two other things. One, Raheem Mostert's still not here.
Yeah,
had the baby yesterday.
Yes.
So it was just a couple hours before practice yesterday, so not surprising. Pete Carroll said, hey, giving him a little time. And the other one is, as you mentioned, inside today on the turf. So they were managing Malcolm Kuntz's reps a little bit.
Yes, and I'm going to piggyback on the Raheem observation, because, and Pete talked about it today, Zamir White continues to shine. He's gotten first-team reps because of
all off season.
Yeah, and he just looks really good. And I think that Pete, understanding football the way he has and being around football, he sees Zamir. The one thing that Zamir has, the advantage that he has over other running backs in that room, and I think Pete's really encouraged by the entire room, but is that he brings something that not anyone else has in that room, and that's legit size and legit physicality. Not to say that anyone else isn't physical. I'm not saying that at all, but there's a presence to Zamir that I think has been noticed by Pete Carroll. So that room really fascinates me. I think it's going to be Ashton Genty is going to be the ball hog of that room. But I am curious, as the year goes on, who ends up being that number two guy? Because to me, as both Zamir White and Sincere McCormick profile as a pretty decent backup running back, right?
And you've got Raheem Mostert still here.
Yeah.
In the mix, he is,
that's his job.
He's 33. It's his job, but really, really talented players behind him. And again, it goes back to the linebacker question too, of if those are your four running backs, which ones are playing special teams? We know Zamir has. Raheem Mostert, I was looking, last time he regularly played special teams, I think, was 2019. And then Sincere McCormick really hasn't.
No.
But I think, again, everybody's going to be needed in the special team. So how does that play out? How does their special teams worth play into potentially how the depth chart shakes out and how the roster shakes out? And I think we'll see a lot in the preseason game in terms of which of those guys are out there, because we've seen them all participating in practice. What happens when they have a preseason game and who's out there?
All right, so a day off for the Raiders on Wednesday. They're back here on Thursday at the facility for day 7 of training camp, practice 7 of training camp. Practice by that time it will be 9.
Now I'm too confused.
Yeah, exactly.
I was doing the math well at the beginning, but after you get the second day off, it becomes a little tough.
Yes, exactly. Then there'll be so the rest of this week looks like Thursday here at the facility, Friday here at the facility, and Saturday the big mock game over at Allegiant Stadium at 1:00. And I know that Pete Carroll and the Raiders are excited about playing in front of the fans to whatever extent they play, and then.
And I don't think it's an
game
accident,
week after that.
I don't think it's an accident, by the way. They're doing it at 1 p.m., which is when games would usually start.
For sure. Pete, there's always something. He knows what he's doing. It's been interesting to watch Pete interact with the fans, by the way. He legitimately enjoys having the fans there. I can't sit here and say all coaches do necessarily. He's certainly one that does, but then they'll have a day off on Sunday, and then it's literally a game week.
Yep.
The following week they'll start preparing. for the Seattle Seahawks starting Monday of next week. But that's it from day 6 or practice 6 of Raiders training camp. I'm Vinny Bonsignore. This is Adam Hill. Thank you to the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. Thank you for Station Casinos, STN's or Station Casinos, STN Sports for all their great support. I want to say thanks to Heidi Fang, who does all the great work that she does. I want to say thank you guys, the readers, the viewers, the fans, everyone that reaches out. We hear our names being called when we're walking around practice. Thank you for recognizing and supporting us. Continue to hit the like button. Continue to hit the subscribe button. Send a Vegas Nation subscription to a friend, to a family member. If you've got Raider fans in your vicinity, it always makes a great gift. We're your one-stop shopping for Raider news and analysis. We're here 24/7. Thank you. You're why we do it. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll catch up to you actually on Thursday after Thursday's practice.